Hello.
Oh,
Nice to see you.
so this has been so great so far. I've been listening.
Yeah, it's fascinating, right? Everything's so
Oh,
fascinating.
yeah.
Okay, so let me introduce you by reading your bio, and then we'll get into some super fascinating things about integrative medicine and sleep. So Sarah Cohen is a internal medicine physician and clinical herbalist. She's the founder of Resource Medical Center, an integrative medicine clinic serving communities throughout Colorado and Pennsylvania. She combines insights from her hospital-based training as an internist with her lifelong study of ethnobotany to deliver a medical paradigm that is inclusive and comprehensive. She finds that it is at the meeting place between modern science and time-honored healing wisdom where medicine is most marvelous and effective. And she is also working with Sound Mind Center on creating an apothecary potentially, and collaborating in various ways as the integrative medicine specialist in our group. So we're also excited to have her back in Philly.
Yeah, I'm so
Welcome.
excited too. Thank you. Thanks, Hannah. I'm thrilled to be here, and this lineup and this topic is so fascinating. I definitely went down a wormhole studying it. um, and it's great. Yeah. So thank you. And I just want to say that I really gravitated towards you and your work because both of us are doing activism work in the world of medicine, and I do consider myself to be an activist. And just to kind of offer a little bit of framework for some of the things that I'm going to offer today, my main goal as an activist is dismantling systems of oppression and advocating for justice and personal dignity. And I'm grateful to be able to join forces with you in doing that. I see you doing that as well. My skill set is in medicine, so that's where my work is. And what that looks like on a practical level is empowering people and communities with healthcare toolkits so that medicine doesn't need to be outsourced all the time. What I see is that people look outside of themselves often for people in positions of power in a very problematic healthcare system that we're working with in the United States right now. And so I think, again, on a practical level, just offering some of these tools that are accessible to people. You can grow your own plants, you can make your own medicine, you can collaborate on a community level to empower ourselves to be our health advocates. So I just wanted to say that. And also, yeah, I've been studying botanical medicine for about 25 years now, and I'm in love with it. And one of the reasons I love it so much is because I find that it expands the therapeutic reach of conventional medicine. Mm-hmm. And again, it's empowering. I think it encourages people to look within themselves, to find their own knowledge, to look within the community, and even to look to our grandmothers and grandfathers, right. and tap into the cumulative wisdom that's there. So we're going to try to do that today.
Awesome. And we'll probably go 10 minutes. We'll just run 10 minutes late so we can take up the full 30 minutes that we had allotted. But just tell me a little bit more about like what is integrative medicine? What does that word mean? What does it include?
Yeah, so I hear a lot of people using that, and I love it. I love that I hear people using the term integrative medicine, and I can just say what I mean when I say it. So to me, integrative medicine, in short, is the thoughtful combination of modern medicine and evidence-based alternative medicine. So that's like the summary statement. But then there are a couple of really important tenets. One is that it considers all of the factors that influence health. So it's this biopsychosocial model of health that really factors in the whole person in the environment. And then another tenet that I think is super important and I hope to always adhere to is that integrative medicine recognizes that good medicine is based in quality science, but is always open to new paradigms. So it's not frozen.
Right.
And we're welcoming, open-mindedness and paradigm shifts. So.
And how did you get trained in that? Just to explain to people that might be watching and curious about the training process. So you went to medical school and then you did internal medicine, and there's extra training, and they teach you about all of these other things. I mean, I
Yeah.
know the answer, but I'm just.
Yeah, so I came to medicine by way of studying plants. I've been studying ethnobotany. My undergraduate degree is in ethnobotany and biochemistry, and I became interested in medicine actually as an activist because I saw that there was a place for change. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to work within this system and go to medical school and really see with my own eyes what's going on here. So I did a hospital-based internal medicine training in Philadelphia,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yay.
yay. And then, which was wonderful. I mean, in some ways, the tools that are available through that conventional training are so helpful, especially in crisis.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Crisis
but
meaning like
crisis,
surgery? Is that what you mean?
yeah, meaning
Yeah.
like acute
Yeah,
emergency.
yeah. Not like crisis like the pandemic.
Not like crisis, well, right, apparently not, right. Well, no, and this is, and we're seeing actually the underbelly of the American medical system right now. You and I saw it probably during our training, and I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
speak negatively about it because
Mm-hmm.
there were
Mm-hmm.
a lot of gems there, but there were also, I saw what I expected to see, which was a lot of distortions and a system that is more focused on managing disease than actually keeping people well and
Mm-hmm.
preventing problems from happening. So after I finished my internal medicine training, I did a fellowship in integrative medicine with Andrew Weil and Tia Rona Lodog at the University of Arizona. And that was great. I mean, it was just a congregation of like-minded healthcare providers who really what I saw it was just expanding the repertoire.
Mm-hmm.
It started to include more tools that weren't addressed in medical school, and we all come from rigorous science. We want the science, and one thing that I think is that I cherish that Dr. Andrew Weil said was that this notion of a sliding scale of evidence-based medicine, where the more potential for a treatment to cause harm, the more evidence we need in its favor. So if there's something like breath work, for example, which is on the other side of the continuum, it's not going to cause harm. We really don't need the randomized controlled clinical trials to show you that breath work relaxes you, right? But some of these heavy hitting pharmaceutical drugs that we're using, we really need, and look at right now with the pandemic, I mean, there's just a rush of science coming, and it's important. The clinical studies are absolutely important. So that is something that I want to emphasize, is that integrative medicine does not reject conventional medicine. It embraces the gifts that it has to offer, but then it also includes other tools that are available that are time honored, that have been used for millennia. And that's again where the plants come in, because these are ancient medicines that are still in use to this day. And talk about empiricism and repeatability. I mean, these things have been used for thousands and thousands of years. So I love, hearing the stories and the narratives of the plants and how they hold up today.
Yeah, totally. So let's talk about sleep.
Yeah,
Tell me things.
Okay. Well, so again, I'm going to emphasize this biopsychosocial phenomenon because I don't want to jump directly into medicines or, the treatments, which are the herbs that we're going to talk about. So I'm going to talk about some of my favorite herbs today. But I think it is important to just address that biopsychosocial aspect. And you touched on this earlier, the behavioral interventions. But sleep, just like other health phenomenon, is a biopsychosocial structure. So what do I mean by that? I can break it down knowing that they're all totally interrelated, but the bio is the biology. So the biology of sleep is what's going on in your body during sleep time. And if there are disruptions in sleep, is there biological noise that's preventing sleep from happening? Meaning, is there pain in the body? is restless leg syndrome is a good example of body bio noise that can interfere with sleep. So that's kind of the biological, referring to the body. And then there's the psychological piece, and that's the mind. What's going on in the mind that might be noise that's preventing healthy sleep. And that's the most common one that I see in my practice. I mean, I at least a couple of times a day, I hear someone say, I just can't shut my mind off at night. I just have this circular thinking. It's like a broken record in there, and I just can't turn it off. And so there's a component of anxiety there often.
Mm-hmm.
And to bring it back to the topic of today, which is in this series, which is, you know, solidarity and sleep. You know, insomnia is often a phenomenon that is a result of trauma. And right now, there's just so much trauma that's coming up for everybody with the pandemic and just changing the norms that everybody knows. And then also racism that's been present since the beginning of America, of the United States, and before, you know, is now being like broadcast. So people are seeing these images, and it's really in the field right now, and the trauma is very real for people who maybe didn't even know that it existed before, and for people of color who are reliving this constantly. And so I'm mentioning that because trauma like that is often an inciting event for insomnia, and sleep disturbances. You guys mentioned this already. So that is a long-winded description of the psychological aspect of sleep disturbance. And then the last one is the social aspect. And that's environment. And like you mentioned, you know, in urban environments, there's light pollution, there's sound pollution, and, you know, that affects certain populations and communities more than others. And some of that is not modifiable, and it's just the environment that someone finds themselves in. And sometimes it means not feeling safe when it's time to go to sleep. So all of these things are factors, and that's why I just want to address that without going straight to like what drugs and plants can use.
Right. And just the cumulative effect of, if you have like light and noise pollution plus trauma plus anxiety about the pandemic, it can all be coming together now, and it's like so overwhelming that how could anyone sleep? And then if you can't sleep, it's even harder to heal from anything, right? Like who can get like trauma therapy when they're like sleepy all the time?
Yeah, and it's right, and it's this self-perpetuating cycle. So all of that said, I think that, you know, it's there are some modifiable factors in all of those things I just mentioned. You know, some of them we just need to work out, and we need to put the work in and really, you know, do our work and make things better for, you know, in our communities. But then, you know, there are also these behavioral modifications, and I'll just run down those really quickly. So one is just, and these are actually some of the hardest things to do. I mean, people just don't want to do these. One is, you know, taking artificial light out of the room, so out of the bedroom. So having the bedroom being a place for sleep and sex and relaxation, and not bringing the computer screen into the scene when it's time to go to sleep. So just try to eliminate those EMFs, electromagnetic fields, when it's time to go to sleep. Another modification is just having a nightly behavioral practice, like breath work. There's a great simple breathing technique that's called the 4-7-8 breath that's easy to find with an internet search, that's really great for just communicating with breathing to the body that it's time to relax. And then I think you're going to do some guided meditation today, which is a great, you know, a great thing to do before bed. Let's see, the other thing is getting adequate exercise during the daytime, not at night, which is a challenge right now because a lot of people are, becoming more confined to being inside. But getting adequate exercise will amount to feeling more tired and ready to go to bed at night. And then also just stopping caffeine in the PM hours. A lot of people don't want to do that, and then they end up being awake at night. And so by a lot of people, I mean me. I don't like to stop drinking coffee in the PM hours. So those are some behavioral interventions that really make a big difference if you can actually adhere to them. They're tough though, So yeah, and then I think those are kind of the first step is the behavioral change. And then after that is when you can start to introduce some of the supplements and herbs. There are a couple of supplements that can be really helpful for calming the body and the mind, like magnesium is a good one. And then also melatonin. I think you all were talking about melatonin earlier today. That's effective for some people. So those are two supplements. And then there are the plants.
Let's talk about that.
Okay. So do you want to talk about cannabis first, or what do you think?
Sure. I mean, this is like and psychedelics. I'm considering it a psychedelic, so tell me about it.
Okay. All right. So I'll try not to get too preachy about cannabis and cannabis prohibition and, the politicization of cannabis, but there is a truth there that needs to be said. But I'll start with the botany. There are 3 varieties of cannabis. There are 3 very well-studied varieties of cannabis. There are a couple of them where they're starting to be discovered. But the 3 main varieties are cannabis sativa, and cannabis sativa indica. So cannabis sativa is hemp. Cannabis sativa, and cannabis sativa indica are known as marijuana. Cannabis sativa is, by definition, has low THC content and is not intoxicating. Marijuana, by definition, has more than 0.3% THC, typically a lot more than 0.3% THC, and is intoxicating. So those are some of the definitions around the plant. Cannabis has an incredibly rich ethnobotanical history. It's to the extent that it's almost impossible to extrapolate or extricate human behavior from our interaction with cannabis. It's in the oldest documented texts, it's in archaeological evidence, in ancient religious sites, and it's in millennia old pharmacopoeias from all around the world. So the pharmacopoeia of ancient Greece, of India, of China, they all have cannabis as medicine in there. And it's food, it's fiber, it's fuel, it's medicine, and it's also often used for spiritual practices throughout history. It was part of the American pharmacopoeia. In the mid-1800s, it became officially part of the American medical pharmacopoeia. And then about 1 century later, it became criminalized. And that's when, in the mid-1900s, was when the war on drugs started. And we know that the war on drugs and the criminalization of cannabis is rooted in racism, capitalism, and the prison industrial complex. So we have a lot of work to do when it comes to reframing the prohibition propaganda to the clinical science and to the evidence-based medicine. And there is evidence-based medicine when it comes to cannabis. Specifically when it comes to sleep, there's loads and loads of anecdotal evidence. People, and even in my practice, when I do cannabis evaluations, there are hundreds of people who report to me that it's the only thing that will help them sleep. And then there are emerging studies and ongoing studies right now, some randomized controlled clinical trials that are ongoing to see how the different cannabinoids affect sleep. So at this moment, there are more unknowns than there are knowns when it comes to cannabis and sleep. But what we do know is that so THC and CBD both reduce sleep latency. So the timing to onset of sleep is reduced.
Okay.
So that's for people who can't fall asleep. Using cannabis helps them to fall asleep, essentially. And then we also know that cannabis reduces REM sleep, time in REM sleep. And so that's like kind of a complicated issue. And you were kind of getting at this earlier about, okay, well, if you're not in deep sleep, what kind of effect does that have on the brain? And we don't really know. We don't really know the long-term effects of not having REM sleep. However,
I'm just like a deep sleep fan with
I
prefer the REM. That's just me.
Yeah, I'm a deep sleep fan myself. And REM is where, REM sleep is where the dreaming happens.
Right,
and so,
right.
I'm a dreamer, and that's really important to me, is to be able to dream. So, it's a nuanced issue, but one study I did want to mention is a study that was done with Sativex, which is a synthetic THC and CBD analog. That is a pharmaceutical. So this is a placebo-controlled randomized trial that was done in prison populations, interestingly, with people who actually like self-reported that they used cannabis and didn't want to stop using it because it helped them sleep. And what was discovered was that a lot of these people had post-traumatic stress disorder. And the process of going to sleep was frightening because of the nightmares that happen so frequently. And people would rather avoid sleeping altogether and nightmares altogether than go through that process. So the study was on prison population with this synthetic cannabinoid. But what it showed was that there was a significant decrease in the number of nights with nightmares, and then there was a significant increase in the total number of hours slept by the study participants. So
interesting that maybe having less REM sleep is less nightmares, right? Like maybe that was part of it.
That is, I mean, and that's,
or just like people are calmer and they're not having a stress response during sleep or whatever.
Yeah, and the thing about that is, one of the great things about cannabis is that it does address that, that I'm going to say that biopsychosocial word again, because it does address kind of those different layers of what could be preventing someone from sleeping. So it's funny because often an adverse effect of cannabis that's listed is euphoria, which to me is not an adverse effect.
You're like, yes, please.
Yes, personally. Euphoria.
Okay.
And so that the euphoria aspect can address, the pre-sleep anxiety and just allowing a person to get into a calm state. And then, the biological aspect of actually, shortening sleep latency and then preventing REM sleep from happening so that the nightmares aren't an issue. And
does it matter, sorry if I'm interrupting this final thought, but just I'm wondering, like, edibles versus smoking versus tinctures, and does that matter for the sleep aspect?
Yeah, it does actually. And so that's all the pharmacokinetics, right? So when cannabis is inhaled, it is pretty immediate onset, within seconds. But it lasts in the bloodstream for only 2 to 3 hours. So earlier, when the question was asked about cannabis and sleep, Dr. Gehrman, is that Gehrman?
Yeah, Dr. Gehrman, the first one. Yeah.
Dr. Gehrman mentioned that there's, with inhaled cannabis, that there's increase in waking episodes during the night, but that's just with inhaled cannabis. With the ingested method, the pharmacokinetics are totally different. So it ends up staying in your body for 6 hours instead of 3 hours, or
Mm.
somewhere around there. And so people find that they'll use the inhaled method to stay to sleep, to fall asleep, and then they'll use the ingestible method to stay asleep.
Mm-hmm.
And we could talk for a very long time about cannabis, but the cannabis has so many different medicinal compounds in there. THC is the one that's is the cannabinoid that's intoxicating.
Mm-hmm.
CBD is another one that is non-intoxicating, but it is psychoactive, so it's very calming. And both of those have shown benefits in sleep, just in terms of self-reported sleep quality
Mm-hmm.
and number of hours of sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And again, long-term effects we don't know, but the adverse effects of using cannabis for sleep, people report like feeling daytime sleepiness, which may be related to lack of REM sleep. So
right.
um,
And then I guess if there's less nightmares, does that mean there's better good dreams, or we don't know about that? Are
well,
people
I
having
think
like
people aren't really
yeah.
dreaming as much.
Mm.
Because they're not really. What was that little dance you just did? I think I missed it.
I don't know, it's like my perception of cannabis dreams.
That was good. I like that. I don't think people are dreaming because they're not in REM sleep.
Right.
And actually, one of the withdrawal symptoms of stopping cannabis is really vivid active dreaming. So kind of an interesting phenomenon.
Yeah.
So I would say, there are all of these different flavors of insomnia and sleep disturbances. And I would say cannabis is particularly helpful for insomnia. And this is anecdotal right here. I'll say that disclaimer.
Yeah, okay.
Just what I see. It's particularly helpful for insomnia that's refractory to, anything else. People who have just tried everything and they need to sleep. And then also for PTSD. So, people who have nightmares on a regular basis, and that's really interfering with their quality of life and their ability to function, cannabis is a great one for that. Interestingly, it's not one of the qualifying conditions in the state of Pennsylvania or in the state of Colorado. Insomnia isn't a qualifying condition for a cannabis card, but I think
weird, because I feel like there's less research on other conditions that are qualifying, but maybe it's like harder to prove or something. I mean, that have less research. There are other conditions that have less research.
I've given it some thought, and I just wonder if it seems less severe than the other conditions. But if you have insomnia, it is not severe. It is definitely it's a risk factor for a lot of other disease processes, and it really interferes with the person's quality of life and ability to function during the day. So
yeah, totally.
So
what other plants are you going to recommend too?
Okay.
And the other thing, because we only have like 5 minutes or so left. You're also going to be a special guest for the Sound Mind Learning Series, and you're going to talk a little bit about.
Okay.
Confirmed right now.
All right, I'm in.
But so you also have interest in some of the other psychedelic plants that are like less on the, that are outside of MDMA and LSD and psilocybin, that there's a whole like ethnobotany includes a lot of plants, and a lot of them have psychoactive properties, and I'm hoping we can delve into that a little bit together with folks.
Actually, the next plant that I'm going to talk about is passion flower, which is absolutely one of my favorite plants. If you've ever seen a passion flower, you will know it. It is just this illustrious explosion of beautiful color, and it's a Native American plant. And actually, there's a passion flower house in West Philadelphia. I don't know if you've heard of it, but
I haven't seen it.
there's a lot of passion flower growing there, and also the healing work that's being done with passion flower and other plants there.
I think your mic is a little quiet. Does it seem like quiet? Yeah. Is there a way to maybe I can just.
I can come a little closer.
Okay. Yeah, that's better.
louder.
So,
Yeah, that was my little shout out to the Passion Flower House.
sweet.
But yeah, so I adore this plant. And one of the things that, a little story that I love to tell about passion flower is that you will often find bees sleeping in the covered in the pollen of the passion flower, and they're basically just drunk on passion flower pollen, and they're just all cozied up in the flower. So do yourself a favor and do an internet search on drunk bees in passion flower pollen or something to that effect. But that's also just a testament to the sedative effect of passion
Mm-hmm.
flower.
And how do you take that?
So you can take it as a tea or as a tincture. And teas get kind of tough when you're talking about bedtime, because you don't want to drink a tea right before you go to sleep, but because then you end up having to wake up to go to the bathroom. But so passion flower is great for that one type of insomnia that I mentioned, that is that can't turn my mind off, circular thinking, ruminating at night type of thing. That's great. Passion flower is great for that. And it's one reason why I kind of made that connection when you were talking about psychoactive herbs, is that one of the mechanisms of passion flower is that it's an MAO inhibitor. It has harmaline and harmine in it, which are also the same alkaloids that are in the Banisteriopsis cati, the ayahuasca vine. So that's kind of an interesting phenomenon there. They're present in much lower quantities in the passion flower vine, and the parts used are the vine and the leaves. And there's some good data on passion flower, and people taking passion flower preparations. The dose isn't very standardized in the literature, but the takeaway is that it increases total sleep time in a statistically significant way, and then also it just reduces the anxiety around going to sleep. It's an anxiolytic. It reduces anxiety, and it does also have some GABA action as well. So there were some other.
Do people just like buy that online, or are there certain places where you think is a good quality? In case anyone's like super pumped about trying the Happy Bee serum.
So I know Susquehanna Apothecary makes a passion flower tincture, and then I also, I know that at the Passion Flower House they are growing passion flower there and making tinctures. And then
if you're in West Philly.
If you're in West Philly.
Assuming everyone is from West Philly.
Yeah, everyone is in West Philadelphia. And then also, Susquehanna Apothecary is online. And also, the Herb Farm is like a brand that's in a lot of stores that you can usually find a passion flower tincture. They're pretty big brands. I like them.
Cool.
So, yeah.
And any other plants?
Well, I can just quickly, I can just say ashwagandha is another plant that I think is great for, that's more of like, so that's Withania somnifera. It's actually a nightshade. So people with nightshade sensitivity should stay away from this plant. But this is an Ayurvedic herb that's an indigenous plant to the Himalayan region, and it's another herb that's been in the Ayurvedic pharmacopoeia for thousands of years. It's been used in Ayurvedic medicine for, again, anxiety, insomnia, and actually anemia. It's an iron-rich plant. So people who have restless legs there's an overlap there. Sometimes there's an iron deficiency that it goes with restless leg syndrome. Ashwagandha is great for people who are just have this tired exhaustion but still can't sleep. So it's like that burning the candle at both ends, wired and tired type of can't wind down type of scenario. That's ashwagandha. Is it's in the world of herbalism, it's called an adaptogen, which means that it acts on the stress system. So it helps the body adapt to stress, essentially. And so that one I actually think, can actually help the body to adapt to outside insults, like noise pollution and sound pollution. it actually can help the body, supports the body to do its own work to grapple with stress. So yeah, so that's another great one. And
maybe we can also make a list and just post it on the website, just
sure,
the ones you've talked about, so people, if they're people don't have to.
We actually got through, I was just going to talk about passion flower, ashwagandha, and then I was just going to mention valerian root really quickly, which I actually don't really use valerian very often because it has, and this is why I wanted to mention it, has this paradoxical reaction for some people where it actually ends up being really stimulating. So it's interesting because it's one of the most popular herbs that I always hear about when it's like the insomnia herb that I hear.
Yeah.
And
it also smells like feet.
It does, yes.
It's really gross. I had to get rid of it because it's like in my cabinet. I was like,
yeah, it smells terrible. Yeah. Have you used it? Have you used valerian or
yeah.
turn you off?
I mean, my cat also loves it. I think he he thinks it's catnip. I don't know.
Okay. But yeah. I mean, it's great. There's it probably is the one, the sleep herb with the most evidence showing that it works, for just the amount, it actually increases REM sleep. So if you're looking for dreams, if you're looking, to increase that state where dreaming happens, that's valerian. But I would just mention that there is, just to keep an eye out for that paradoxical reaction, which can be mitigated by adding some other sedative herbs to the valerian. That's where you get into some a more advanced herbalism, but it's definitely doable. Valerian and hops, which has the best binomial nomenclature ever. Humulus lupulus is the name for hops. Okay. So valerian and hops is a great combination, and combining hops with valerian can, offset that potential stimulating effect of valerian. So.
Wait, hops like the hops in beer?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that makes you sleepy? That's what makes you sleepy?
Oh yeah, it's a sedative. Yep. Yeah.
Cool.
So valerian and hops together, there's a good amount of literature on that being effective sleep aids. So.
Oh, cool.
So awesome. Those are, that was everything, and I'd be happy to share. I kind of cruised through because I started to run out of time. So I
think having, and we can just provide resources, so if people were here, if they didn't write it down, they don't have to scroll through and find it, and just where to buy things and different maybe even the research articles around the different things if people really want to nerd out.
Okay, yeah, sure. And reach out, Resource Medical Center, it's my website.
And people can go to see you as a doctor too if they want.
And people can see me as a doctor. I've been doing telemedicine right now. I'm actually not seeing anyone in person directly, but I can still do it. I still it's like this, right through the screen. So,
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you so much. This was great, and I'm excited to see what comes next.
Yeah, me too. And you live Sound Mind Center, so.
Yeah, it's all perfectly aligned for us. It's great.
Awesome. All right, I'll see you soon.
All right, I'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.